Hi everyone, I'm Paul from Lab, working on libraries and tools on top of Ceramic, notably the glaze packages that are used in this demo. So I will give a quick overview of a demo application made using glaze and Ceramic. So let me zoom in a bit, probably. So in this demo, so it's just about taking notes and storing them in Ceramic. So we're just gonna here to authenticate, generate a random seed. That is one of the authentication methods with Ceramic in order to create a DID. So here I'm gonna authenticate with this seed. Take a few seconds. Right, and then we can start writing a note, saving it. And so here what's happening is that I'm creating a new Ceramic stream that just contains the contents of my notes. And using a library we call the DID data store, we're associating this creating nodes, so the stream ID for this note, to a record stored associated to my DID. And so that's what allows the contents to be discoverable based on a specific identifier. So let's see if I leave here, and actually I will copy this seed so we can see once I create a note, and then if I get back to it, it should come back. So just do it there. All right, it's okay, it's saved. So now if I leave and authenticate using the same seed, I would see my note here being, again, discoverable just based on my DID. And then we can update it, and hopefully, again, it's gonna be back there. So yeah, really just simple simple experience here, but just to show the possibilities of Ceramic and the glaze packages created on top. And so to show a bit how this works, so we have this repository here that is on our Ceramic Studio organization, the Glaze demo app, so which is really running the code I've just been showing. So in order to start interacting with this node and with creating these contents, we use what we call schemas. So a schema is it's a JSON schema, and it's gonna be defining the shape of the contents. So here, the first step is to create a data model for our app, which is what we can do with the model manager from the Glaze Dev tool. So that along with the client and authentication allows to create schemas in Ceramic, so that they can then be used at runtime by the application. So here, to go through the flow quickly, so it's just running in a script, so it's something we can run to create the model once as a developer, and then we can just interact with it at runtime. So first, what's needed is to create a DID, which is what Ceramic uses for authentication. So the DID is going to be controlling the streams that we are creating, because here our schemas are streams on Ceramic. So we create a first schema that is for the node itself. So it's going to contain a date and text. And here, by using the schema, this is going to be validated on the Ceramic side itself. So this is what provides guarantees for application that they can reuse the data from other applications because the shape of the data is enforced by the schema in the network itself, and it's not just about trusting the client. And so we can also create another schema for a list of nodes. And so what it's going to contain here is just an array of node items that will contain the ID, so the ceramic stream ID for the created node, along with the title. And it's really, the goal is really to have first loading this list here, and then when clicking on one of the items, we can load the actual contents. But we can have just a first load here that will load all the titles of the nodes associated to the DID. And in order to use the DID data store, we need to create what we call definitions. So definition is just going to be a unique identifier that is going to identify in the index the entry point for our nodes here with IDX, with the DID data store. So when we create a definition here just called nodes, and using the schema of the nodes list, so from the DID, we will be able to retrieve the nodes record that is going to have the shape of the node schema here in terms of contents. And we can also create a single tile here that is a placeholder node. Again, using the schema from the node, single node, and with the text being some placeholder text that is used by the app. So this is what we can see here. When we create a new node, it's actually using the contents from this node in order to fill this placeholder. And all of this is then written to a JSON file here locally that is going to contain our encoded model. Yeah, so because with we have this ownership model with Ceramic, with the DID. So having, in order to share the model across different people, different organizations, and different networks, whether it's a Ceramic testnet or mainnet, we can create this signature for the streams, right, using the data model dev tools. And that allows us to serialize the signatures along with the contents so that we can then reuse them to publish to different Ceramic networks, different Ceramic nodes. And so that allows here the publication script to read from the encoded model we just created before, and then just publish it to the local Ceramic node. And so anyone can start using the same schema, the same definitions on their own node, on their own Ceramic node, even though they haven't necessarily created the schemas and signed them, because they would need, obviously, to have the same key if they were to be able to sign them. But doing so, they can just reuse them even if they can't actually control all these created streams. And so once published, what we're gonna create is a runtime model aliases, and it's just gonna be having human-friendly aliases mapping to Ceramic stream IDs and commit URLs, which is gonna then be used by our application at runtime. So at runtime, the model we are using is just here having so this mapping of definition. So for our nodes, we will have a stream ID, same for the schemas that are stored. But here, it's just having a way to interact with human-friendly names that are just going to point to the stream IDs. So in the application itself, we don't really need to think about stream IDs, but rather about entities in a model. And so just to go a bit through the logic of the app, we have this environment file here that is really about loading the JSON model we have and defining some, so it's using TypeScript, so defining some types for the shape of the data that is matching what is defined in the JSON schema. And that allows us to create a model type, so that contains the list of schemas, definitions, and types mapping to our JSON in order to really like just interact with it when we interact with our data model runtime. So here, what happens when we authenticate is that we just inject the seed here, which is gonna authenticate the DID for the user. And we assign this DID to the Ceramic instance. So when we create streams or when we interact with Ceramic, it's gonna be within the context of this DID. And from there, so we create a tile loader, is some utility function to load tiles and to cache them eventually if needed. The data model, so it's a wrapper. It's a runtime library to wrap the model aliases in order to interact with them just using the human-friendly names. And the store is a DID data store that is mapping the DID to the associated records. And so we can see how it's used here to retrieve the list of nodes associated to the DID. So we can just do store.get nodes, considering nodes is the mapping we have here from our definition, and that is defined by our aliases. And also the placeholder node that is gonna just having contain the placeholder text for the input. So here, same, we can load it from the model using load tile and with the actual alias name rather than knowing the stream ID. And so we can really having this environment set up for the context of the DID when it gets authenticated. So then this application is made using React. So a lot of it here is really about managing the state, so the different transitions we have between the different screens once the user authenticates or saves a draft, open a node, and all these states, right? So here it's really about describing all these different possible states and transitions, and having some functions to provide these interactions. So here's the authentication, retrieve the environment as I presented before. When saving a draft, we have we also have this flow of creating a new tile here with a note matching the schema that is defined in the model and with the data that we set. And from there, we create a new node, so we create a new stream, retrieve the current list of nodes, and from there we can add the newly created node to the list here. So using the ID we just got from the created node and the title we want to set, and then saving the nodes so associated to the user, so that we keep track of all the edit nodes. And so opening a node is quite similar on the other side. We just need to load based on the stream ID for the node, so we can display it. So yeah, that's all the main functions here that are then being used here in this UI, which is storing all the components here in just this single file, but to display the list of nodes and draft and kind of all the other UIs that are simply using the functions defined in the state. So yeah, overall pretty simple application, but really specific to the kind of interactions that are provided by Ceramic and with the Glaze libraries on top of it. So I hope you enjoyed this quick demo. You can learn more about Ceramic and Glaze in the Ceramic documentation on developers.ceramic.network. And again, find this demo here on the Ceramic Studio organization's Glaze demo app repository on GitHub. Thank you.